Hi, I'm Brooklyn. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is where I'm going to teach you a lot of the basics of quilting so that you can have confidence to approach almost any project. This is a technique that I refer to as snowballing corners, and I don't know why it's called that, but I've heard other people call it that, so now we'll all be in the same loop. This is one of the easiest ways to change the shape of your blocks without doing anything too crazy. It's a technique that we use in our witch's feet pattern to get some of these little details correct. So our heel here, these right here, this is all done with snowballing corners. So let's take a look at how this is done. So when you have your pieces for the snowball pieces, you'll know the dimensions in the pattern. I'm going to show you how to do a double corner and a single corner. So first, kind of like in half square triangles, we are going to draw a line on the back of our pieces here. I'm just going right on the diagonal, right down the center, using a straight edge. You can use almost any marking tool. I love the friction pen, so that's what I use. And then we are going to place this exactly over this corner. I'm going to take a pin and pin it in place on the side that is the outside. And it just happens to line up with the diagonal line. So now I'm ready to bring it to my machine. I am going to sew near this dotted line, or this diagonal line, but instead of directly on it, I'm going to sew just the tiniest bit above it towards the side with your pin. So you can see that you can still kind of see that drawn line, but my seam is next to it. It got a little funky up here, but it's going to be okay. Next, I take my ruler and I open it to make sure that it's the correct way, because sometimes these can get confusing with specific colors or anything. So I open it and make sure it looks the way I want it to, close it back down, and then cut this excess off just a 1/4 inch away from that seam. Now I open it up and she looks beautiful. So I'm going to press the seam. On this one specifically, because I am going to do a double snowball corner block, I am going to press the seam open. Now the last step on doing this block is we're going to square it off again. So we started with a 2.5 inch piece, and I am going to square it to 2.5 inches again. You will probably just be cutting off your new fabric. And as I've said before, sometimes the pieces that get cut off are so teeny tiny. Sometimes they're not. So it's good to square off every time, even if you don't feel like it needs it. And now that is a single snowball corner block, but we are going to do a double. So we have our next piece, and it's the exact same process. So you overlap, place your pin, and then we'll sew right next to that line. So now we have this other piece done. Again, we're going to open it up and make sure that it looks right. And the reason we sew next to this line instead of directly over the top is because when you fold it, you lose just a little bit of fabric. And if you sew right on the line, it will look more like this and you won't get a perfect shape. So let's cut off this excess. I'm going to press my seam, and now we're going to just square it up like we did before. This time you line up this corner down here with your 2.5 inches, because we've already squared this. We know she's good, and we want to cut off any excess orange up here. Now, another thing to watch for is on a lot of my patterns, we do this so that this edge is flush or this corner is like pointed. So when you sew it into the next piece, this is the seam allowance. That's what that accounts for. And this should be kind of like tucked in. So you want to make sure that this point has just about a 1/4 inch, or when you're sewing that you line that up so that this point stays in the right spot. So I hope you've enjoyed learning how to do the little snowball corner blocks. This is another way to add so much versatility to your skill set, and it's super simple. So if you have any questions or if you'd like to see any more videos, make sure to comment below and search through our channel to see what else you need to learn about quilting.